morning, class. Today we are on lesson 106 of our Saxon 4 math book, and the title of this lesson is Evaluating Expressions. So this lesson is really not that difficult, but it is full of quite a bit of vocabulary and talking how we turn the language of math with numbers and symbols into the English language with words. So we'll start with evaluating. Evaluating is a fancy math word meaning solve. We're just going to solve problems by evaluating them. Okay? Expressions is the math word for a math problem that doesn't have an equal sign. So if you'll notice, I have 3 expressions written up here. I can turn these expressions into equations by putting in an equal sign. Like if I added equals 7 here, r plus 3 equals 7 is an equation. R plus 3 with no equal sign is an expression. So when we evaluate expressions with variables, these letters that we don't know the value to, then we need to be told what this value is, because there's no way to solve it unless you tell me what is r. So in the book, it says r is, and another way to write is with an equal sign, 5. So now when I'm solving these expressions, I'm just going to take the number 5 and plug it in for r for each of the problems. So instead of r plus 3, I want to write 5 plus 3. Nyla, what's 5 plus 3?
5 plus 3 is 8.
It sure is. Instead of r minus 3, what am I going to write, Nyla?
5 minus 3.
5 minus 3. I just plug a 5 in for r, and what is 5 minus 3?
2.
2. Instead of 3r, so this is another little tricky one. When we put a number next to a letter, we are saying to multiply. And I use this little dot instead of the x because that looks just like an x. And when we start to do problems that involve variables, which are letters that represent numbers, x is a really common variable. So it gets confusing if we use this for the multiplication symbol. So instead, we can use the little dot, or we can just write the number next to the letter, the variable that we're multiplying. So what this means is 3 times r, and we've been told that r is 5, so 3 times 5 is
15.
15. Correct. Okay, those are the only examples we have for today. However, there is kind of a lengthy lesson practice. I'm going to hold up those problems, and at this point I would suggest you pause the video, try to work out the lesson practice problems on your own, and then when you restart it, we'll go over them together, and we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the words that are in the problems. So here you go. Okay. All right, if you are back with me, we're going to start by going over lesson practice A, which says, if m equals 12, what is the value of m minus 10? So they're telling us m equals 12, and they're asking, what is m minus 10? We simply plug 12 in for m, and 12 minus 10 equals
2.
2. There's our correct answer. Okay, problem B has a little more of the language. Evaluate. Remember, evaluate means solve. So, solve A plus B when A equals 9 and B equals 15. So instead of A, we're going to write 9 plus, instead of B, we write 15. And Nyla, what did you get for that?
Hold on. was... So, the answer was 24. Is 24.
The answer is 24. Do you want to tell me how you got that in your head?
So, I know that 15 plus 5 is 20, and 5 plus 4 equals 9. So if we split 9 into 4 and 5.
So Nyla is saying if we turn 9 into 4 plus 5, because that's the same thing as 9,
and we add the 5 to this,
then we can make this problem easier to do in our head, because 15 plus 5 is 20, and then 20 plus 4
is 24.
is 24. And there's our answer. Okay, problem C. What is the value of x, y, when x is, another word for equals, 6, and y is 7. So keep in mind we have a letter next to a letter. I am not looking for 67 as my answer. When I have a variable next to a variable, remember there's this invisible multiplication sign there. So instead of 67, can you back up just a little bit, babe? Instead of 67, we have 6 times 7, which equals what, Nyla?
6 times 7 is 42.
6 times 7 is 42. Now, if it took you a couple minutes to get that answer, that is fine. You might have some strategies that you use to find 42. However, by the end of 4th grade, I would really like for all of your addition, subtraction, multiplication facts, and division facts to be memorized so that you know them like you know your name. Nyla, what's your name?
Nyla.
What's 6 times 7?
42.
Yes, you know that because we just did it, right? But we still need to work a little bit on memorizing other multiplication facts so that I can say, what is 9 times 4?
I don't have to think very hard for that, like do the actual problem, because I know the numbers, but...
What is 9 times 4?
Hold on.
It's okay.
36.
30. You got it. Yep, she had to think about it, getting a little camera shy, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But it's important for you to have these things memorized because as you move on in your math career, math gets hard. And you don't want multiplication to be hard. If you know that 6 times 7 is 42, when you have to do the more difficult problems, you don't have to think very hard about these basic facts. So spend some time there, put some effort in, and memorize your facts. It will make the rest of your math career that much easier. All right, moving on to D. What is the value of W squared when W is 5? So keep in mind, whenever we square something, what we're saying is that we want to know what W times W is. We take the base, this is called the base, and multiply it times itself 2 times. So if W is 5, what we're really saying here is what is 5 times 5?
15.
Times 5?
Oh. 25.
25, you got it.
I was thinking times 3.
Yeah,
Just
5
10
times
more.
5 is 25. Okay, problem E. If A equals length times width, then what is A when length is 8 and width is 4? So I have a little side note about my handwriting here. This looks like a number 1. Really, it does, I'm aware. But I write my number 1s like this most of the time. so that you can tell the difference between the L and the 1, because typically I like to print instead of write in cursive. You will see some people write this same problem in cursive so that you can tell that that's an L. You might see this in your book.
People also write a one like this.
Yes,
sometimes.
they can, but I write mine like this, okay? Actually, I'm just looking at the book now, and it looks like this. It's italicized, but it looks the same as I write it in print.
This is just somewhat fancier.
Yeah, somewhat fancier, okay? But in some other math books, you may see it written in cursive so that you can tell the difference. So, moving on. We know that L is equal to 8, so I have A equals 8 times W, which is equal to 4. And Nyla, what is 8 times 4?
8 times 4 is 32.
8 times 4 is 32. There's our final answer. Problem F. We have a division problem here. It says evaluate, fancy word for solve. Evaluate M divided by N using M equals 12 and N equals 3. So this looks like a fraction, and if you said, oh, they've got a fraction there, you would be absolutely correct. However, in 4th grade, we also know that this fraction bar is the same thing as a division symbol. So really what I'm asking is, what is 12 divided by 3?
4.
12 divided by 3 is 4.
That's
Final
that
answer.
lack of memory.
Yeah, that one you've got memorized. Okay, our final lesson practice problem is G, and it says find the value of the square root of t when t is equal to 16. So we're going to substitute 16 in here for t. And if you remember, square root means we're looking for what number times itself is equal to 16.
4.
So 4 times 4 equals 16, which tells me that the square root of 16 is equal to 4. Final answer. Okay, if you are my student working through the Saxon book, you're going to want to start written practice for lesson 106, which begins on page 672. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon, and we'll see you next time.